Are you guys able to see my screen? Yes, okay. So this is our STEM camp information session. So again, I introduced myself, Adamaka here. So just wanted to do some welcomes and some online introductions to our presenters. I'm also a former data analyst from Facebook. I really pivot this year to really focus on really growing and adapting our program to this virtual format due to COVID. But my background is in math, and then I also have an MBA in finance and management. I am an Oakland native, and this nonprofit really came out of my experience as I matriculated throughout the STEM pipeline. I was just really focused on ensuring that there were other young girls that looked like myself, as well as from the underrepresented communities, had the opportunities for STEM education and STEM career opportunities. So I just want to pause just to see if I had Karen here, who's also on our advisory board, to do an introduction. Most of you guys probably know Karen.
Hi, yeah, I'm here. Hello, hi everybody. I'm Karen Trappenberg-Frick. I'm on the faculty at UC Berkeley in City and Regional Planning. And for those of you that I know, thank you so much for signing up to be a volunteer. We really can't thank you enough. Our Planning Student Association and College of Environmental Design Students of Color also were super helpful in distributing this, as well as the College of Engineering. So if you came through any of those listservs, thank you for signing up. And thank you to our student organizations for helping too.
Yes. Yeah, and Karen got involved by, she was a speaker at one of our camps, and she was just extremely helpful and just really excited to see these young girls just really innovating in the STEM space and coming up with great ideas. And we said, you know, how can we work together? So Karen's on our advisory board.
Yeah,
thank you, Karen. Ms. Shalonda Tillman is our Chief Operation Officer. Unfortunately, she's no longer able to attend. So I just want to pause just to see if there's any other Self-eSTEM advisory board or executive board members on the call here, so you could do introductions as well. Is there anyone else?
Hey, Adamaka, I'm here, Josette.
Okay, can you introduce yourself, Josette?
Hi, sorry I can't join via video because I'm having internet connection problems, but my name is Josette Neal DeSantin. I am on the advisory board, been with SelfeSTEM for a while now, and I help with some curriculum components with Ms. Tillman, and as well as wherever else I'm needed. So I'm happy to be back and meet all of you and hopefully see you soon.
Yes, and Josette is also an educator too, as well. So she primarily taught in the high school arena, and then is now kind of making the shift to, I think it's an adjunct professor. It's either at, I forget, it's not Holy Names, it's St.
Mills and St. Mary's, yeah.
Mills and St. Mary's, yes, awesome, yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have anyone else from the SelfeSTEM team here? No? Okay, we'll go on to it. So let me give you just a little quick history about our organization. We were founded in 2014, and our mission is to really build the self-esteem of young girls and women for what I call untapped communities. Typically, you hear the term low income or underserved. I like to flip it and say, like, no, this is just untapped talent, untapped communities. And we really want to provide them with STEM leadership skills and technical training to actively produce and engage in the economic and labor markets. So what that means is that we just don't want you to say, oh, you know, STEM is fun, but we also want to provide experiences where you can actually, young girls can actually see themselves within the STEM pipeline, whether it's going and pursuing a degree in STEM, and also going on later to a career pathway in STEM. So when we think about our program in the early stages, ages 7 to 17, our focus is really just that engagement and inspire, because we know that it's not a skill and capability issue that affects the STEM pipeline, but it's really that lack of encouragement. So that's what we're focusing on the early age. And then for the college to career, we're still working on this component, but our vision for this is to really focus on recruiting and sustaining. And when we're talking about sustaining, it's really moving from a survivor mode to more of a thriving mode. How do you excel and achieve once you're in that STEM education or you're early in your career. So that's the focus of that program. And you'll see some more details regarding that. There's 3 components that we try to apply across all of our program learning, is to really unlock the hidden sources of innovation talent. So it's just really for the girls to see that, no, you have the skills and capability, but maybe you don't get those opportunities within your current school environment, in your classroom. So that's one of the things that we focus on, Self-STEM. And then it's really the closing that STEM gap by providing hands-on interactive activities. And then the last part is really inspiring the next generation of STEM leaders. So these programs here, we have launched 3 programs to date, part of our early STEM immersion program. One that you're volunteering for is the STEM Exploration Camp, and that's a 1-week summer camp. And then we also have our STEM Engagement Club. The focus of the STEM Engagement Club is to really get the girls out of the classroom on the weekends and really doing activities where they're engaging with STEM professionals primarily. So there's interactive field trips and then active conversations with STEM professionals. The last part of our early STEM immersion program is our robotics club. And again, knowing that the demand for coding, engineering skills are in top demand, that's what this program is really focused on. So it's really to strengthen and encourage them to pursue careers in the STEM space. And as I mentioned, we haven't launched this. We're looking to launch this by the end of the year. It's our school to career program. And basically it's to take this untapped talent and help them to not only place them in the STEM pipeline, but also to thrive in the STEM pipeline. So you can kind of think of this as more of like providing them more of the soft skills to really thrive within the STEM pipeline. Last thing I want to talk about our program, just a few highlights. One of the things that you guys can read in details here, but you can see that we've had key program sponsors and partners from a wide variety of companies in the Bay Area, as well as global companies and global brands that you see there. You guys also receive a copy of this deck and this information and a copy of this recording, so if you ever want to go back. But one of the things that I like to highlight is that for our robotics club, we made history twice, and this is why our program is so important, is that we were the first all-girls team of underrepresented minority to compete in what we call the first Lego League robotics competition. You guys probably have heard of that, as well as the first tech robotics competition, which is the more advanced robot competition. So that happened in 2017 and 2018, respectively. So that's recent time period. So that's why having these programs to really say, hey, without our programs, these girls don't get this opportunity and this exposure into a robotics competition, into some of these activities or these STEM careers. So that's why it's really important for programs like this to exist. So we're going to kind of shift over to more of the camp details. So with the camp agenda, this information is presented on our website. But what we like to do is provide project-based activities that connect to something that is happening either with current events or something to the students or the campus world. So our theme is called Adapting to a Virtual World, where the participants will learn about smart cities and autonomous cars and micromobility and AR/VR technology. So based off the knowledge that they learn, they're going to have this project of building and coding in a virtual reality where they're kind of redesigning their communities and their space to help reduce the spread of COVID. As we know, we think about these roles of city planning and in the community. When we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, often that lens sometimes is not applied horizontally. When the person that's sitting in the designer role or in that position, even for myself, if you don't have that full lens or that full perspective, sometimes those designing of those solutions are not really inclusive. So what we're trying to have the girls is to imagine, to really spark their STEM curiosity and say, hey, we know that this is something that you're probably hearing as a young girl and you may or may not know what's going on, but we'll give you a high level background about, just the spreading of diseases. And in your community, what would you kind of design from what you learned of actually helping out to reduce the impact in your community? And then below, we have a common theme about our learning objective, But the key thing that I want people to be aware of is just we really want to increase their awareness and interest towards STEM career pathways. That's what we're really driving forward. So I just want to see Karen or Josette if you have anything that you would like to add.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so now this is more of our camp agenda and schedule. So all of our activities are via Zoom, and then the camp activities for the young girls will be conducted independently. And what I mean, again, normally when we're in person, there's typically people assigned to groups and they kind of work in groups, but because people are virtually and we have to have social distancing, just want to make it aware that the girls will be working independently, but you'll be engaging with them. So we'll have breakout rooms to facilitate more of individual assistance and troubleshoot. For a group size, we're trying to target anywhere between 10 to 15. So one of the things that we've shared with the girls is that you'll need laptops and computers. We understand that people may have other mobile devices, but those typically work well for our virtual reality platform. With Zoom, you know, the phone works, a tablet or iPad will work. But as if you can think about maybe, hey, I actually want to mock up something in the VR platform, I'm working with my group, that being on a mobile device may not help. So we'll actually encourage you to try to be on your laptops and computers. So the camp days are July 13th to the 17th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then Saturdays are closeout celebration. So that will be from 11 to 12:30. That's just only an hour and a half. Across the board, we just ask people to join 10 minutes prior to the camp start, allow for us to do attendance tracking. We're going to enable this feature called a waiting room. Again, working with kids, we have to think about, now that we're going virtual, what are the security protocols that we should implement? And one of the things that we're doing is a virtual waiting room. And I'll go through that in details as well for everybody. We'll have that listed on a slide, what we'll be having. So just want to kind of provide a high-level overview of each of the days. So day one will be an introduction to environmental science and smart cities by UC Berkeley. And we're still working to confirm the leaders, but I think we'll have like an employee from Google in the Google planning space. But the output or the things that you guys may be helping them with is that they'll have to sketch an idea or solution on reducing the COVID-19. And Karen, correct me if I'm saying this incorrectly, but they'll be using, is it called mind maps to like,
Yes.
mind maps to sketch out their ideas. So with that one, as a volunteer, you'll be receiving the lesson, the overview, and then we'll do some breakouts, and then we'll have various roles at the end to explain, and you'll see how you'll be able to engage with the students, but we'll get to that. So day two is the introduction to self-driving cars, autonomous cars, and micromobility by Lyft. So they'll be deep diving into some type of activities, maybe solving some specific issues from the learnings with Lyft. And then the other component that we have is that we will have a D&I representative from Lyft to just really talk about the importance of diversifying the STEM talent pipeline. So day three is just the introduction to AR/VR, which is augmented reality and virtual reality. And then they will explore what we call the actual Kai XR, the virtual platform, where they'll be able to design their final project. So the final project, they do have the flexibility to change, but it would tie back on something from day one through their sketches that they're working out. So it's like their notes and their brainstorming. And then what we're going to try to do is that we're going to have them build it. So there's two tracks. There will be like this drag and drop platform in this VR space. But then for the older girls who are more advanced, the Kai XR team will do more of the coding principles to actually code and build within the VR platform. Each participant will receive a VR kit mailed to them. And so ultimately the goal is that people can explore their solution that they came up with in the VR platform. So that's ultimately what they'll be doing for the next days, which is day 4 and day 5, where they finalize their project. On day 6, we really don't need any volunteers to literally with the breakout rooms, but it's just a day of celebration. What we like to do is really to highlight our STEM camp stars and just really get the campers as well as the volunteers and sponsors to just really share their testimony about the experience of going with the camp. So we just really focus on that. It's a time to celebrate. So for that day, you're welcome to join. We try to keep it very fun and very exciting. Karen, you wanted to add anything?
No, it's a wonderful week, and I've really enjoyed it the last couple of years, and you see the girls really grow, and they come up with just the most amazing ideas. And so it's just really fun, and they're very inspiring. So no, thank you.
Yes. Oh, and I forgot to add, Karen, if you can also help monitor the chat for me, that would be great. I forgot to mention that. I know that questions are towards the tail end, but somebody may post something in the chat.
Yes.
Thank you. So online ground rules. So this is where we came together as a team to say, hey, you know, we have this in-person format, but now we're moving online. How do we actually draw parallelism where we can still maintain some safety here? So what we're telling people in overall is join the meeting in a quiet space, you know. And what we mean by that is, I understand that everybody's shelter in place, but try to do your best in a quiet space so you can actually help if you have to go off mute or you need to engage with somebody, that you're kind of in a quiet space. We ask people to mute your audio when you join in, and then to turn on your video. Some of these rules, again, is primarily for the kids, but we also want to share with you, because as volunteers, you just kind of have to be aware of our online ground rules. And then we say no chatting offline. So what I mean by no chatting offline, if you see a youth in the camera and they're not looking at the camera, but they're talking to someone else, that's what we mean by chatting offline. And you'll see how this is all connected together once we give you the description of the different volunteer roles that you'll be able to play. We will have breakout rooms. One of the safety features that in our chat message we have disabled, and if you see, if you're not a co-host, and that will be more of the SelfeSTEM staff and the presenters, we disabled the private messages. So that's, again, just a safety precaution to make sure that the girls, if they're sending messages or even volunteer, that it's going to everyone that we can see. So we're encouraging people when the campers to come in to enable speaker view. When we do the breakout room, it's the gallery view so that you can see everybody. One of the things we want to stress is that our camp days will be recorded. Every day will be recorded except for day 2 with lift, due to some legal reasons when unable to record that day. Another feature we have enabled is the waiting room. So that's the reason why we'll say to people to please join a little bit early, because we want to make sure that from our roster that we don't have somebody who maybe received our link and they don't match either our camp roster or our volunteer roster. So this last point is very important. So for our participants, they're going to come in with their first and last name, and then they're going to have their age as the camper, and we have the example. So that won't apply to you as a volunteer. But for a volunteer, once we guys identify your roles, and we'll go into that in details, we're going to ask that you log in with your first and last name, and then in your last name, after your last name, add a dash in your role. And we'll go through the various roles. The reason why we didn't want to send the roles ahead of time, as we're all adapting to online, we just wanted to make sure that people receive the explanation of the roles before they actually sign up for it. So again, this is something that we were thinking through the process. Normally in person, as you show up, we're able to provide this orientation the day of the camp. So this is the reason why we took this extra step to say, no, let's explain the roles, because we're moving online virtually. Social media posts. We just encourage you to post and hashtag us. If you're like someone who's online and say, hey, I'm volunteering for Self-eSTEM. In your post, we ask that you not post any kids. And I forgot to make that note for the volunteers here. We do have consent from the parents to share their Self-eSTEM images, the images of their children, but again, it's mainly from our social media platform. So if you want to, post like, hey, I'm volunteering for the Self-eSTEM camp, this is what I'm doing every single day, we're fine with that, but we just ask that you do not include any kids' faces or images in your post. This camp survey doesn't apply to you, it applies more to our participants. And then we do encourage you to have like a blank piece of paper or pencil for note taking, just in case you wanted to write something down. I'm just going to skip over the additional Zoom features because I'm pretty sure many people are aware of some of the features, but we do encourage you to go online if you're not familiar with Zoom just to do it. And then the last thing is I want to talk about is the e-swoosh. So we're really about positivity and supporting STEM innovation and STEM ideas. So when we see that people are actually demonstrating something of being engaged or actually coming up with a great idea in the project, we like to do this thing called a swoosh. But because we're online, we're calling it e-swoosh. So I'll give an example. I would say, Karen, you know, that's a great introduction that you have there. Can we give Karen a swoosh on 3? So we go 1, 2, 3. We clap and then we swoosh. And this is just something that kind of like with the girls, if we were in person, we try to say, you know, don't, you know, hug the participants. Don't, you know, sometimes, you know, not to give a high five, but you can give somebody a swoosh. So that's a way to acknowledge somebody's contributions without the physical contact. So ours is now at e-swoosh. And then this is the virtual code of contact. I'm pretty sure people are familiar with this, but respect everyone. We are welcoming to all people of all backgrounds and identities and genders and beliefs. The other part that we say, this also applies to volunteers, it's just engagement. So when you see like a camper with their video off, you know, you can, if you see that, you're more than welcome to chat in the group to actually say, hey, you know, camper such and such, please turn on your video. Because we do have a large number of participants. We'll have anywhere between 100 to 150 participants joining this camp virtually because a lot of people are in need for these type of STEM activities. Virtual rules, again, you know, campers should avoid any language or images that are inappropriate and offensive. And then we'll talk about different roles that people will play to help us to monitor that. Communication. We're going to encourage, again, campers to communicate within the Zoom, not to talk to anybody offline. And the last part that I want to stress is security. Security is very important for us. So we tell parents as well as our volunteers, if you lose a device or you get hacked, please let us know because we just want to make sure, because we're working with kids, that someone doesn't get access to our Zoom meeting invite details. So, and then we ask for people to please do not share the Zoom meeting details with anyone. Even if you know that it's another volunteer, just make sure that they reach out to me. You can tell them to direct them to reach out to our info@SelfeSTEM email, and we'll make sure and verify that they're a volunteer on our list, and we can send out those details. So now this is the meat of it. So this is our volunteer role. So the best way we're trying to do is make it fun and call it It's a Production. So what we did when moving online, we identified different roles. If you think about producing something, some type of video. So we'll have these different roles called a producer. So our producer is responsible for monitoring the video camera, for raised hands or responding to questions and bringing it to the speaker's attention. Also, the producer may be there to flag any inappropriate behavior or flag any audio noise. And like what we like to say is this is lights, camera, action. So there will be an opportunity for you to provide your priority once we go through these different categories of what role would I like to play. Then we also have the messenger. The messenger is someone who helps us to monitor the chats and questions and sidebar conversations, or maybe give me inappropriate language. So this person is more looking in the chat group for this, and the producer is kind of looking through the different screens and just making sure that things that are displayed on the screen is appropriate. The messenger can reply directly to intervene in the chat, or you can actually flag what we call the executive producer, and we'll have a list of the executive producer. So we like to call the messenger the DM manager. So you're managing the DMs. For the facilitators, again, this is when we go into the breakout groups. Facilitator is somebody who isn't who has background with engaging with youth, who isn't afraid to speak and kind of drive the process and keep students on task in the group. So that's the person that's kind of like troubleshooting and solving within the breakout rooms. I can give you an example. If you're noticing that you're seeing a kid that's just sitting there, the facilitator will be like, hey, you know, camper A, Do you mind showing me what you worked on so far? Or just kind of trying to really maintain, you think about the classroom setting in the breakout group. So we try to say we want to make sure we keep it lit. That means keep it exciting. And that's kind of like the facilitator role. So if you aren't afraid to, I'm not saying afraid, but if you have a knack for engaging with kids, or you have a knack for speaking to really drive facilitation in groups, we encourage you to sign up for that facilitator role. And then we also have the photographer. Normally we have a videographer and a photographer in our camp to really take pictures and record just the activities and the great ideas that the girls are coming up with. Because we're online, we're just gonna ask the photographer to take screenshots and photos of either the online speakers or activities that students may hold up to the camera. And we do have a Google form that will be online on our website for that person to submit that information. So we really want to focus on capturing like engaging moments, and we call this get them angles. You know, with the drink zones, you got to get those angles. So that's what we're doing with the photographer. And then lastly, we have the writer, and in the breakout groups, the writer would just capture just high-level notes. It doesn't have to be in detail. But the goal of the writer is just to summarize campers' engagement and contributions in STEM innovation. So we say write it down. And again, one of the things I want to stress about this role, if you sign up for the role, doesn't mean that's the only thing you're doing, but that's part of like your dual role. You're open to speak to the students similar to the facilitator, but we just want to make sure that we have somebody wearing that hat and it's always keeping it top of mind. So the executive producers that we have is what we call the behavioral patrol. And our goal is to help to make sure that people stick to this script. So say for instance, and I'll give an example. Let me pick someone, Vanessa. I just saw you on my screen, Vanessa Lee. You see a student that won't turn on their camera. And then when they turn on their camera, they won't engage. Well, because the executive producer will be co-host, you can then send a direct message to us because you're able to direct message the co-host, which would be like the SelfeSTEM staff and the presenter, and say, hey, I have this student that is not being engaged. We can then enter into the breakout rooms and we can monitor it. We can then try to chat with the person offline. I mean, in a one-on-one conversation, because as a co-host, we have that functionality. And then we can then take the next steps. Do we have to remove this student for the day? So that necessarily doesn't have to be your decision, but you can also flag the executive producer if you're having any type of behavioral challenges with students. All right, so now it's Q&A. So I just wanted to pause. You can provide your questions via chat. We'll try to start with the chat just to get some of the questions out of the way. But wanted to see if anybody had any questions about the content that we produced and shared above. And I'll just wait. Okay, so I see one question that came in. Can we have different roles on different days or pick one to keep the whole time? Because it's very difficult to manage this online, we will ask that you just pick one for the camp. However, in the event, like if you send us a chat, it's like, hey, you know what? I actually really want to be a photographer this day. As you show up and you're in the camp, that's easier for us to make that adjustment, because then I can see how many people showed up on that day to say, you know what? I can actually move you to this group as a photographer. So we're going to keep it with one throughout the day. I mean, throughout the entire camp. So that's the role, will be that role throughout the entire camp. But we do have flexibility to switch. But however, because some people may be a no-show as a volunteer, we just ask that you wait until you're actually in the actual Zoom meeting room, and then to flag us if you want to switch to another role. But our goal is to keep that same role throughout the camp.
Adamika, do you want me to read out the questions to you?
Yes. Okay, that'll be perfect.
So how do they, and I'll just do them in the order that they come in. How do we declare our role?
Yes, so I'm going to, you'll get an email, but we have a form that's on our news and events tab. So what we do with the camp is any important information, we always have like a location online just in case people can't find it in their emails, because I know a lot of people have their the inbox backed up. But our news and events tab, by Monday, all this information will be on our news and events tab. You'll see it where it says, volunteer roles, where you'll sign up for the volunteer roles. So all that information will be on our website.
Okay, then the next question, what kind of background should we have about the VR platform before the camp starts?
So you do not need to have a background in the VR platform. So just to provide you some details about that day, there is another group, Chi XR, which they will actually be leading the workshop, and they will actually have their staff there. So with that, their role is to provide kind of like a tutorial of how you will navigate on that platform. And it's a drag and drop type platform. So with that, they'll have that. For the older girls, they are partnering with this other group called the Hidden Genius Project to actually have facilitators to lead and show them how to code within the platform. So we actually have people who actually will give the instructions for the drag and drop. And in the breakout groups, you'll see that instructions for that. But for the coding, they will actually have people who actually will lead that. And there's nothing that you will need to do there to maybe just to help facilitate that conversation in that dialogue. That's it. But we have people who will actually be the subject matter experts to actually present. And even if you had any questions, even if you wanted to participate and learn how to code, you can also do that. But the goal is to really create this supportive learning environment for the girls to tackle their projects and items.
Okay, thank you, Adamika. And then the next question is, how many facilitators will be attending in a breakout room?
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it at least 1 to 2. The challenge that we have, it's a good challenge. We had overwhelming support. I make this joke to Karen. It's like, I think people have more free time on their hands with the shelter in place. So it's going to be based off the people submitting it. We're going to look at how many people said they wanted to be a facilitator with this day, how many participants that we anticipate there. And we're going to create this spreadsheet, which we'll send out to all the volunteers to say, based off your feedback, here will be your roles for this day. And we're going to try to set up the breakout groups. The biggest challenge, again, is typically you do this in person the day of, because you know how many people show up. Virtually, we can say that we have 150 girls that said they're going to show up, and then we get there and maybe half only show up and join the session. So we'll have to adapt to that. So you guys will receive a spreadsheet based off your feedback, and that information will be emailed to you to say, hey, based off what you provided, here's will be your role, here will be your potential breakout group, but we can't guarantee that the girls will show up that day. So we'll try to put something together with the team, but in doing this over the last year, you kind of have to wait until people show up the day of and then troubleshoot at that point in time, because that type of planning completely goes out the window once people are no-show.
And so then the next question is similar to the one before, but just in case, would we need specific skill sets that would support the student learning, such as coding, which we've talked about, but are there any other skills that go beyond the roles that you've identified?
No, I would say like the most skilled role is really in the facilitator role, and just engaging and just make sure you're doing what we call classroom management or breakout room management. For the most part, all of our presenters are the subject matter expert, and you'll be getting information, and then in the breakout rooms, we'll give you instructions. Another example I can give you is when we're doing the mind map. We'll have samples of mind maps, and it's not for them to actually get a perfect mind map. It's really about the activity of actually just brainstorming and creating notes.
So then the next question is, are you still looking for additional volunteers or backups? This person has some colleagues who would be interested.
We have more, so this is the tricky question. We have more than enough volunteers. However, we also are looking for volunteers for other things outside of our camp. So if you, I'm not sure who said that, but if you send me email, I can flag it, and then like maybe after we get some of our camp's logistics, I can circle back and provide additional insight. But yes, for the camp, we have more than enough volunteers, but we do need volunteers for other program activities.
Okay, great. And I know the person who wrote this in, so we can coordinate too.
Okay.
And then there's a couple like questions about how many days people can volunteer, that they all seem to come in together. Are we required, sorry, people are sending in more. Are we required to stay for the entire session, or can we stay for a couple of hours only?
Yeah, so if you only need a couple of hours, that's fine. I say to let us know, and just like, again, thinking about the in-person format, if we have a volunteer to say, I can only volunteer an hour, the tricky part is the waiting room, because we may be already in the swing of camp operations. So for safety reasons, I have to manually admit you into the Zoom meeting. But for leaving, you can leave anytime, but we just ask that you notify us, because maybe you are the facilitator within that group, and I need to identify somebody to switch out and take your role. So again, that executive producer, which is Ms. Tillman, or myself, and you'll see that we'll have that in our name. As if you can see in my name here, Adamika Jello-Dash, executive producer, you'll be able to identify and find those people where you can send that message to say, hey, I need to leave.
So then the next two questions I'm just going to read together. If we aren't available all 6 days, do we need to specify which days we'll be joining, and if so, how? And then can someone volunteer for only one day of the week, and how will we know which day would be most helpful?
Yes, so you can, to your point, you can volunteer specific days. I do have a question back to the person. On the volunteer form, it had the various days on there. If you didn't see that, please let us know. But yeah, on your form, and we're gonna send this summary out, and you should have received a copy of your volunteer form, but you have day 1, day 2, which days you were able to volunteer, so we know how many volunteers we have each day. So if you only want to do one day, I would say day 1 and maybe day 2 will probably be the most important one. Well, it's hard because, again, with the virtual, it's very hard. Because this is the first time doing this. I mean, all days, because I don't know the students' ability to engage. Like being Zoom with the girls, that's even a new space to navigate. I would say any day that works best for you is the day that you should go with.
And if someone can only volunteer for one day, what role do you recommend that they play?
I would say, let me go back to.
That's a good question.
Yeah. If I were to say anybody can volunteer for one day, I would say maybe a messenger. And again, I want to remind people, when you have this role, doesn't mean that you can't still chime in, doesn't mean that you can't still put a comment in. We just want to make sure that we have somebody that's just wearing that hat. And I'll give an example. Like I could be a messenger in my breakout group, but I may see a student that is slacking off. It doesn't mean that I can't step in and say, hey, make sure, hey, Jessica, I see that you're not paying attention to the camera. Can you direct your attention, back to the camera so you can stay engaged? And so that's what I want to just stress that important. We just need to know that we have designated people in the group. So like if I have a breakout room, I know at least in that room that I have at least a facilitator, a writer, and a producer, and a messenger and a photographer. There may be times where people have to wear dual hats because we don't have enough people in the role. And again, when we get there and we're having the breakouts, we'll be able to assess. So it's going to be hard to assess beforehand because some people may not show up. These are great questions.
Yeah, no, there's more. There's still timing about when people are going to hear about their assignments or their and all that stuff. Could you repeat that? I think that people, yeah.
So the form about, so you, after this call by Monday, you will receive a communication with the instructions, but you can also go to our news and events tab. I haven't turned on the form, but there's a form after this call will be turned on of the different volunteers you can sign up. My goal is to send out something on Monday, having people to respond by Thursday about their role interest. And then from that, I will just consolidate that information and send it out to everybody saying, hey, this is where you express your interest based off this assessment, you'll have that. So I'm just looking at the calendar. My goal, depending on people respond quick enough, I would say, excuse me one second, I'm just gonna give you, the form will be turned on after this call, so you can submit it immediately after this call. The email will go out just to all volunteers, whether the people who are on this call or not, on Monday. I'm actually going to say by Wednesday, we want people to submit the form. So hopefully by the end of the week, next Friday, which is I think July 3rd, you guys will receive a copy of the spreadsheet with your roles. You'll have that for each of the day. You'll have that.
Okay, so then they'll know, so then they can slot out those.
So, yeah, so then you can update your login, login name. Yep. There's a way in a feature you can even click in on your profile with the 3 dots and just say rename. You can rename yourself.
And they can put the dates will be there too, so they can update their calendars as well. Right? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So there's several people seem to be, or at least 2, but there's probably actually there's a couple. Could we indicate interest in those other activities besides those camps, or alternatively other support camp activities that don't require being there midweek? This person has the rare job that is not work from home, but would love to really help out.
Yes, on the volunteer forms, everybody will receive a copy of their volunteer forms that they submitted. There's a part where you were able to express different interests. Just always feel free to send me an email. If you're interested in getting involved in something else, feel free to shoot me an email with your questions, and I can respond from there. But yeah, if you want to do other things, we're after our camp, we're also looking to hold what we call like a volunteer hacking session to really highlight, hey, if somebody's good at social media marketing, there's an opportunity to volunteer and drive that forward. But this focus of this camp, this session is really about the camp, but there's other volunteer opportunities to get involved with our organization.
And Adamika, I've noticed that once I became a volunteer, I would get emails regularly for the next activity that I could sign up for. So you'll probably have that still too?
Yes, so you'll be added to, you'll be added to our listserv, but that's typically after the camp, because we just want to make sure the communication is just focusing only on the camp.
Okay. Okay, I think that's the last of the questions. Did I miss anybody's? And if I did, I'm sorry. Please, if you don't mind copying, pasting it back in, and then, or if you have any other questions.
Let's see. Yeah, did we miss anybody?
We have one new message. Oh, can you demonstrate the e-swoop again?
Yes, let me scoop. Sorry, I have my natural setup. So just to give you a background, I played basketball. I'm a big basketball fan, huge Warriors fan, and I played basketball in high school and college. I'm like, anybody that knows that about me, I just love to go to basketball games. I was a season ticket holder with the Warriors before they went over to San Francisco. It's like, that's too far of a commute. So with the e-swoosh, again, we do this just to recognize outstanding behavior, ideas, and just to reinforce what we call thriving learning environments. So if you see a participant say, hey, I have this great idea, and you're like, oh, that's a great idea. Hey, everybody, can we give participant A swoosh on 3? And again, this could be the facilitator. This is something that you can do too as well. But other volunteers can see this as well, whether you're the producer, the photographer, or the writer, or the messenger. But the e-swoosh is like, let's give them a swoosh on 3. 1, 2, 3, clap, swoosh. Yes, so it's like the flick of the wrist. So maybe we do it as a group. I think this is a good time. I think we don't see any more questions, but everybody I can unmute everyone. Yes, it's gonna be kind of loud, but this is fine. It's a little chaos, so it's okay, but towards the end. But I would love to see people to put on their cameras to see if they could do
Where is she writing this?
the swoosh on 3. Let me see if I can get my monitor.
You want to remove the share screen so we can
Yes,
see?
I'm going to do that really quickly.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Okay. Yes, so I have one of my big monitors. So yes, so I'm gonna turn this way. But yes, I just want to say thank you everybody for volunteering. I know that we kind of went over. I did have a little game, but that's fine. But so we'll go through the e-swoosh. So on the count of 3, just for you taking the time out to just give back to the community and volunteer and invest. The young girls, you guys are what we call self-esteeming. That's investing in the next generation of the STEM talent pipeline. So the count of 3, we're going to give all of ourselves a swoosh on 3. So 1, 2, 3, clap, swoosh. Yes. Awesome, 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 awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that question. I like that question. I just wanted to see if anybody, I mean, this is towards the tail end, whether you're off mute or not, if you just want to add any type of comments or anything that you would like to share, please feel free. No one?
Thank you for leading this important work.
Oh, thank you. Was that, sounded like Ashley? Was that Ashley?
It was Ashley.
Yes. Oh, Ashley, maybe you just quickly introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm part of the advisory board and also work for LIFT. I'm so excited for this year's camp. And thank you all for volunteering.
Awesome. Okay. I think that is it. So if just a reminder, I will have the volunteer form. Give me about like 30 minutes, but I'll have it enabled on our news and events tab. But that's where you can always direct yourself. We'll put a lot of updates and information there because I know some things get lost in your inbox. But feel free to email me if you have any questions. Email is the best way to get to me because my phone is always filled with so many text messages. I sometimes have a no cell phone zone, and I just put my phone in the drawer and put it away. But I typically, I'm at my computer checking email. So feel free to email me if you have any questions. But that entrance form for the roles will be online. And by Monday, you'll receive the full recap communication with an attachment of this PowerPoint presentation for your records. We just ask that you do not forward this information because a lot of this content we created on our own from SelfeSTEM. So that's the only thing that I request is that when you receive documents from us, please do not forward it on to other people. I know sometimes innocently we may say, hey, I want to give this to my professor, but just please feel free to reach out to us before you do that. All right. Thank you everybody for your time. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
See you in a couple weeks. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.